A is even after 130 years of publication, Woodrow Wilson essay, The Study of Administration, continuously to have great relevance even today. Second is, what is distinctive about the classical and human relations school of thoughts administration in their complementary to each other? What is asking? What is the classical age in public administration? What is the human relation school and thoughts? And what is the complementary? What is the complementary means what is the equivalent? What is the similar values in both of the school of public administration? Third is, conflict is the appearance of differences of opinion and of interest. Mary Parker Follett. As Mary Parker Follett was the single woman in public administration and humanist who given many theories in public administration. So the thoughts she given, conflict is the appearance of differences of opinion and interest. Like when two people are in conflict condition, there are differences in their thoughts, their ideas, their ideologies, and that's why these opinions are generated and their interest, because of if someone likes tea, someone likes coffee, so there is different interest, so might be there can be a conflict. Okay. So we are going to start D. Leaders do the right thing, managers do them rightfully. Warren Bennis. Leaders do the right things, managers do them rightfully. Okay. It implies that leaders always do right thing, but managers do them rightfully. What managers do because of their ability, their skills as postcode and many kind of new skills they given by. So Warren Bennis, this is by. Administrative law is recognized by its substance rather than its form. Next question is from administrative law. It's recognized by its substance. What is its substance rather than its form? Like CAT and many organizations are made for the Administrative Reform Commission and all that. That question is from. So first of all, we should have some instructions is given here. One is 8 question divided into 2 section, okay, and printed in English. Candidate has to attempt 5 question in all. Question number 1 and 5 are compulsory, and out of remaining 3 are to be attempt choosing at least 1 question from each section. Okay, so 1 and 5th is compulsorily to be attempt, and 3 are to be attempt choosing at least 1 question from each section. Now 3 will be remaining. There is that question, so you should choose the one, and total 5 question you should have to attempt. 3 choose from rest of them. Okay, number of mark carried by the question part is indicated against it. Answer must be written in the medium authorized, and clearly you should clearly write down the answer question come answer booklet in space provided. No mark will be given for answer written in medium other than authorized one, so you should aware about the medium also. Word limit is very important. Attempt of question shall be counted in sequential order, that is also important. Okay, so these were some instruction. Now we are going to start today's session. Administration, today's session, Woodrow Wilson. What was the question? Question was, even after 130 years of its publication, Woodrow Wilson's essay, The Study of Public Administration or Study of Administration, continue to have great relevance. So we should have to provide the relevance of Woodrow Wilson. Today we discussed about Woodrow Wilson. So Woodrow Wilson is widely regarded as the father and creator of public administration. First of all, his essay on 1887 in general titled The Study of Administration, which is believed to have started an inquiry into the field of public administration as a separate field. What he implies that it should be a discipline rather than a subject. Rather than it should be joined with politics, it should be a separate discipline. The purpose of Wilson in doing so was manifold. He wanted to approach the study of administration scientific perspective. Administration should be a business-like. Public administration has become complex at that time. That's why he wanted to help studying the how of government rather than what of government. He emphasized on how, not what. क्या कर रही है गवर्नमेंट, दैट्स नॉट इम्पोर्टेंट, बट हाउ कैन द गवर्नमेंट डू दैट, दैट्स इम्पोर्टेंट. He tried to de-link politics and administration and emphasize on administration as containing elements distinct from that of politics and political science. Okay, he distinct from politics and political science of administration. In fact, the relevance of the essay is evident from the fact that genesis of public as a distinct discipline originated from year 1887. The study of administration provides the starting point for a systematic inquiry into the operating principles, search and science of administration. Classical period was found proposed distinction between public and politics and administration. Many of theories has been subsequently revised, like situational dichotomy and comparative public administration, which are now understood better because of later development and the currently in use. So here we should has to provide some important words. Keywords are there. One is what? One word is scientific perspective of administration, separate discipline as an administration, business like administration, comparative administration, and we can even provide some facts which we read today, like American system and spoil system at that time. So as a president of America, he given some qualitative things in administration, like he compared the European administration and the American administration. Then he given some facts about how to public administration work as a separate discipline, and all that kind of relevance we should provide it as a father and creator of public administration. Next question, what was there? Next question was, what is distinctive about the classical and human relation school of thought administration is there complementary to each other? He is asking about classical and human relation and complication to each other. So answer will be the human relation theory has not rejected or dismissed the classical theory totally. It highlighted the critical gaps in the classical approach and modified and extended certain classical concepts. It has rejected the two concepts advocated by the classical theory, concept of economic man and formal institutionalization. As we all know, classical theory is totally emphasized over the economic man. Men do not have values, men do not have ethics, men do not have even, he has ethics, but he don't have ethical valuable men. We can say like compassion, empathy, sympathy, all are not in a man. What classical is want to provide, like he is just a productive man, he is just a economic man. And formal institutionalization, like there should not be informal relationship between the man and his institution and all that. The human relation theory is also called as the neoclassical theory. It's called as a neoclassical. The human relation, like the classical thinker, have accepted efficiency, productivity and legitimate values. Human relation theory assume that workers should be made to be feel valuable. On the other hand, the human relations seek to maximize the value, efficiency, productivity, and eliminating the dysfunction caused by over specialization, alienating hierarchical arrangement and general dehumanization of classical approach. So on the other hand, classical theory is based on assumption the people are driven by purely economic motive. There's an organization consists of both formal and informal structure. These two aspects of an organization are not contradictory but allied to each other. So this question, what they format they provided here, we should add on more things, like what kind of thinkers was at the classical time. Like you can give the example of Taylor, you can give the example of Field, you can give the example of Weber, and many kind of thinkers like Urvik, Gulick, Munerele. So they all was the follower of classical theory, and after then you will come up with the human relations. So you can describe about the Mary Parker, Follett, Mayo, and Bernard and Simon. So many thinkers after L.D. White. Woodrow Wilson was not purely Woodrow Wilson is purely classical, but not purely exactly, because his theories are totally different. So these kind of thinkers we can take some names, some examples, and we can sum up the answer. Okay, next question. Conflict is the appearance of differences of opinion and interest. Mary Parker Follett. Okay, so next question is Mary Parker Follett. So here is the answer. Mary Parker Follett was the first organizational thinker to give some recommendation on principle of human association. Actually, she was a social scientist. So she given the human association. She argued that since organization is a human collective, there will always be a group activity. So if there will be a group activity, they will associate to each other. She observed movement, there will be group dynamics, some group activity and certain behavioral pattern. This will start affecting some individual and also organization. According to Follett, conflict is not something that is inherently lead, rather it is natural outcome of human association. It's natural, it's not something that inherently, like I will never fight to someone because it's inherent in my body. That is natural. I can hurt because of some values are different from some persons. According to her, conflict is the appearance of differences, the differences of opinion and interest. Uh, so conflict is a natural response due to various instructions between individual and group. Follett cites the example of sitting in a library where she wanted a window shut and another person wanted it open. To resolve the conflict, a window was opened in another room, reframing the situation without compromising the interest of any one party. So gave the concept of constructive conflict. So she given the concept of constructive conflict, the conflict which could be beneficial rather than disastrous for the organization. She also gave concept of conflict resolution, which was an alternative dispute resolution strategy, as she given that time. And all party have different kind of interests, so it should be safeguard. There should not be conflict in an organization. Okay, next question is what? Next question is here. Yeah. Next question is leaders do the right things, managers do them rightfully. Warren Bennis. So what is asking about? It's asking about the leaders do the right things and manager do it rightfully. Warren Bennis is a leadership thinker who has put forward some valuable insight on leadership and management. Bennis believes that leadership and management should go hand in hand and they are closely linked, complementary in nature. Okay, so few differences between two. In today organization, value come from increasing people knowledge. Worker in industry are no longer considered as cogs. Therefore, a worker does not only expect this manager to assign him a task but expect him to define a purpose. Why worker given some work? It can be defined by an manager. Okay. The manager should not only focus on increasing efficiency but should also make sure that the worker develop new skills, develop talent, inspire result. Thus a new generation manager does all things that are essential from growth perspective for worker and organization. Adequately vet though they might be related only to the task at hand. On the other hand, a leader may himself be the manager, but he has a long-term views of things. He standardize his goal, implement his tasks at the right time and the right way. His focus, long-term benefit of his subordinate and organization, not only on the current task but particular employee also. His view is pan-organizational. As in normally here we can give some examples like the our ministers, they are a real leader. What they do, they are closely associated with the local peoples. So local peoples give them their problems, their anxiety, their stress to the ministers. So how they will deal with the new schemes, with new policies, with new plans. So there is the direct correlation between the leader and the organization and the people. Okay, but manager, what manager does? What manager do exactly? Manager do the things which are really are different, like we can say he improve the efficiency of organization, he develop the skills, he develop the talent, inspire the result and all that. Okay, next question. Administrative law is recognized by its substance rather than its form. Here is emphasis is given on substance rather than its form. Administrative law is the body of law that governs the activity of administrative agency of the government, which comprises of rule making or delegated legislation. adjudication, implementation, enforcement of public policy. So what is administrative law? It is the delegation of the legislative, educative and implementing enforcement public policy, that is called the administrative law. Okay, so it is recognized by its substance rather than its form, because it has different structure and form in different countries. Okay, because it's a different kind of structure, that's why, like in France, administrative law is in the form of droit administration, where there is one rule for regulating the behavior of individual of society and one rule for regulating the member of state and administration. Okay, one code for member and individual of society and their private aspect, and another code for member of state and administration, which is administrative court or tribunal, and the apex of this court will be the council the state, very small division of the country into administrative division, that is smaller than even country. Okay, so there is two kind of bodies. One is for the common peoples, for individual, for society, and that second was the council the state, that is for the administrative personnel, administrative court, we can say the tribunal. It's the apex body where state administrative peoples go there, members go there to for dispute resolution. Okay, into administrative division that are similar that even country. These overlap, then the final decision will be taken by a special court constituted for this purpose. And if they want a final decision, then there is a special court, like we have the Supreme Court is different from CAT, Central Administrative Tribunal, that kind of organization. Whereas in England, rule of law is supported, where everybody in the state shall be subjected to some common law, and no official, irrespective of status and authority, shall be kept outside the purview of rule of law. So in England, what was the thing there? There is authority shall be kept outside the purview of rule of law. Okay, so here is the common law. State shall be subjected to some common law. No official, irrespective of his status and authority, shall be kept outside the purview of rule of law. So every official should have to follow some authority of rule of law. Thus, Dicey rejected the idea of administrative law that was akin to droit administration, or that which was being practiced in France and other European countries where there are separate rules for administrative officials. So that's why Dicey rejected the idea of administrative law that was akin to droit administration, because it was different from droit administration. That's why Dicey said no, we can't follow this. Okay, and European countries have different kind of separate rules for the administrative officials. However, the substance is same, as an administrative law determine the organization, power, duty of administrative authority. The emphasis of administrative law is on procedure for formal adjudication based on the principle of natural justice and rule making, despite having differences in its form. Okay, so here what is author wants to say? He wants to say that there is different kind of form of law, but substance is same. What the purpose to made this kind of organization? The purpose is what? To adjudicating, to delegation of legislation, implementation and enforcement of public policy. So these substance is same everywhere, but the form is different, like France droit administration, England rule of law, and European country have different kind of laws. Okay, next question. New public management has been branded by certain scholars as neo-Taylorism. Is it a justified comparison? What is asking? New public management has been branded by certain scholars as neo-Taylorism. What is neo-Taylorism? We will read here. So, new public management is called neo-Taylorism. It is justified comparison. What factor have led to the decline of NPM so soon after its birth? Factors. Next, Abraham Maslow hierarchy of need and Friedrich Herzberg, a two-factor theory, have commonality in analysis of human motivation. We should have to describe the commonality in two-factor theory of Friedrich Herzberg and Abraham Maslow hierarchy of needs. Here two factors are hygiene and motivational factor. Civil society supplements and complement the state. However, its capacity and role depends upon the will of the state. Okay, supplement and complement of the state, and capacity role depends upon the will of the state. So first question, NPM and new Taylorism. New public management is the attempt to reorient and restructure public bureaucracy in era of liberalization and globalization. After LPG reforms, NPM came here. It is the term which describes broad set of notion containing recommendation regarding how public sector should be operated, like belief in possibility of optimal process, narrow view of process improvement, recognition of one cause of defects pupil, separation of planning and doing, failure to recognize system and communities in organization, view of worker as interchangeable. So Pollitt give the term new Taylorism. They are the principle which were framed in the period after Taylor's scientific principle to increase efficiency and effectiveness. New Taylorism principle include what include, as we seen before, Pollitt what given belief in possibility of optimal process given by new Taylorism. Narrow view is what, like implementation is the only work of public administration, not the interdependence between E, J and P. Recognition of one cause of defects pupil. Okay, separation of planning and doing. There is the separate planning and separate doing. Failure to recognize system and communities in the organization. View of worker and interchangeable. The above principle can be compared to NPM. What was the NPM? NPM was the new era where the efficiency, economy and effectiveness was more important than values, than ethics, than the things which are related to the human values. Like here is the professionalism was the more important, catalyst government was more important, corporate social responsibility, corporate government was the more important in new public management. What is management required, like post-scope is the more important thing, managerial things what more important. That's why new Taylorism and NPM is similar to device, tool, technique, procedure to find tune the public administration so that it can effectively achieve its goals, changing environment of globalization, privatization and liberalization. Next question, Abraham Maslow, hierarchy of needs and Friedrich Heisenberg two-factor theory. Okay, so what are the similarities between the two? Both the principal aims. First of all, okay, first we are going to describe what NPM. As I told you before, that NPM, what NPM implies, it implies the efficiency, it implies the effectiveness, economy, performance, managerial tool like financial incentives, output, target, innovation, market orientation, responsiveness and accountability. NPM is like economic basis, like state society relationship. What is the relationship between state and society, centralization of power. So NPM involve a paradox of centralization through decentralization. Here is both system, like centralization with decentralization. It was pointed out that giving public manager more authority to manage program may result in concentrating decision making in them. So he told that manager should not have the more authority should be divided. NPM may lead to centralized decision making by public manager rather than encouraging decentralization in public organization at claim. Okay, reduce accountability. It has been pointed out that the state minimize can lead to marginalization of government and as a result can lead to marginalization of general public because of reduce accountability. Why? Because of privatization, because of liberalization and LPG reforms, that was reduce accountability of the managerial person, and government also reduce accountability of theirs. That's why it's marginalization of general public. Possibility of monoculture. Critics pointed out that one size fit all approach to public sector reform may not be beneficial to all. Okay, this has led to unhealthy global administrative monoculture which ignores heterogeneity and requirement of context sensitivity. So one size fit for all was not important. That's why possibility of monoculture also can be the answer of NPM, the result of NPM. Okay, next question, Abraham Maslow and Heisenberg two-factor theory. What is the similarities? Okay, so first comprehensive theory of human motivation was given by Maslow. Needs are plural and dynamic and therefore can be arranged in priority order. Like Maslow given psychological needs, then safety, then social needs, then esteem, then self-actualization. Okay, and what Herzberg psychological process, a theory about job factor that motivate employee. So what Herzberg told about job content, interest and challenges. Job content, interest, challenges, job context, salary, package, work and environment. What he focused upon. So both Maslow and Herzberg theory point out the money cannot be the only motivator for individual to work. Compared to earlier theory, it emphasized the meaning of recognition and responsibility. These motives can be found both on level 4 Maslow hierarchy and within the motivating factor Herzberg model. Herzberg was focusing particularly on work motivation, while Maslow approach tried to describe overall human motivation. There is close relationship between of two. Emphasizes the similar set of relationship. Herzberg hygiene factor are roughly equivalent to the Maslow lower order needs like physiological, safety and social. Likewise, Herzberg motivational factor roughly equivalent to Maslow's higher order needs like esteem and self-actualization. Okay, next question is what? Next question is civil society supplement and complement the state. However, its capacity and role depend upon will of the state. Supplement and complement the state. So here civil society is a public space between state, the market and ordinary household. It's a public space between state and market and ordinary household in which people can debate and tackle action. Civil society can influence policy and project formulation through membership of committees, submission of memoranda directly or through elected representative, and interactive rule making in the implementation of policy project scheme affecting the citizen. The maximum day-to-day interaction between government and the citizen take place. Popular image of government is formed. Interaction of civil society with different scholars result in more of exposure of irregularity rather than step for improvement in quality of governments. Okay, the next, capacity and role of civil society depend on will of the state. Why? It is on the state whether it accord a space to play to the civil society. How the civil society thrive depend on the nature of the state. For it is different in democracy and autocratic country. For example, the Chinese government seem intent on eliminating civil society through a combination of new legislation restricting the funding and operating NGO and criminalization of human rights activity as so-called threat to national security. So there is many kind of civil society. So Chinese government wants to, it should be eliminated from, because it can give force to the NGOs who can criminalize the human rights, who can be part of terrorist organization and all that. Okay, the harmonious coexistence of both the state and the civil society safeguard the interests of both the government and the citizen. The democratic nature of Indian civil society is reflected in the formation of democratic state along with the implementation of democratic constitution. What is harmonious coexistence? Like safeguarding the government and the citizen. There is occasion rise of conflict between the civil society and the state as the demand and expectation of society are not fulfilled. So occasionally state also ignore the interest of majority and intervene into the sphere of civil society. As a welfare state, India is expected to ensure social justice along with economic growth. Why civil society organization form? So to describe about the social justice, describe about the economic growth, describe about the demands and expectation of normal Mango peoples. That's why it's formed during that time. So the existence of civil society is essential, yet it is not sufficient precondition for the existence of democracy. It's important, but it's not a precondition that democracy can be exist with the existence of the civil society. Gramsci suggested how the hegemonic civil society can support the state in controlling social practice. The accountability of the state can be ensured only when civil society is self-conscious, vibrant and active. An inactive civil society lead to an responsive state. Thus, the relationship between the state and the civil society is a mutual one based on principle of reciprocity. Okay, but the reciprocity, state and civil society both are in reciprocity because of civil society lead to self-consciousness, vibrant and active society in general. It implies that accountability of common people, responsibility of the government officials. So it is work like a pressure group. It will work like a forcing group who can force to the government that you should do this work and to provide the rights to the common peoples and all that. Okay, next, the participative management school of Argyris and Linkert advocate democracy within the administrative system. Will this approach be equally useful to developing country with evolving democracy? What is the question implies? Participative management school of Argyris and Linkert. Argyris and Linkert both are in a leadership arena. Both provided the theories of leadership, as Argyris provided many theories with a person's maturity, immaturity of an state, an organization theory. Judd provided self-actualization and incrementation, and the different kind of theories provided by Argyris. Linkert as a given system 4 and leadership theory and all that. So advocates democracy within the administrative system. Will this approach be equally useful? What they are asking? Advocate democracy within the administrative system. So we should give the argument regarding the developing country. Next question, executive position imply a complex morality and require a high capacity for responsibility. What is imply executive position? What it required? Morality, capacity and responsibility. This is given by Chester Bernard. The functions of executive of Chester Bernard. Okay, next is when the media is controlled by vested interest, how can it control the vested interest in the government? How can the media become more responsible and impartial? Next is a simple question that is asked in media. So first question was participative management. Argyris and Linkert advocate democracy within the administrative system. So participative management means involvement of worker in management and decision making process. What is participation? When workers and manager both are working together, that is participative management. It describes an organization as an interaction influence system and regard the most effective organization as those in which reciprocal influence by many members lead to greater influence as a whole. It is sharing of power authority between worker and management. It maintains that by creating supportive relationship, the manager can enhance the facility and productivity. According to Linkert, managers should restructure the superior subordinate relationship. Subordinates have greater influence over the activity involved in the work and greater chance influencing superior action. Linkert advises the maximum participation occurring where the manager is indifferent to several alternatives and allow worker to choose among them. This approach can be equally useful to developing country while involving democracy. The prerequisite for the successful participation is strong trade union. Trade union should be strong. Okay, that was first foremost important point. Favorable attitude of management. The attitude of management should be progressive and democratic. Due importance should be given to employee view and suggestion. Clear understanding of objective. Employee and employer should have clear understanding of objective participation. Education and training of worker both can be increase the participative management. Voluntary participation desirable, like participative management should be voluntary and not compulsory. Employee voluntary participation largely influence the success of participative management. All these conditions are suitable for evolving democracy. This creates employee empowerment, which is technique of involving employee in their work. Through process of inclusion, empowerment encourage employee to become innovative manager of giving them more control and autonomous decision making capability. So, given psychological satisfaction to worker, it leads to cordial labor management relationship. It creates uniform approach employee and a worker to raise industrial production. It creates platform for direct negotiation. It creates responsible approach among workers. It remove grievances of employee. It creates feeling of involvement among employees. It brings stability, prosperity to the business enterprises. It also introduces industrial democracy. So these are very common and normal points we can give here. What can be implied the participative management and Linkert and Argyris, and how this can be useful for the developing countries in a developing democracy. Next is Chester Bernard. What was the question? Executive position imply a complex morality and require a high capacity of responsibility. Function of executive, Chester Bernard. Okay. So Chester Bernard offers a system approach to the study of organization, which contains a psychological theory of motivation and behavior, a psychological theory of cooperation and complex interdependency, and an ideology-based meritocracy. Bernard asserted that for leadership to be effective, it had to be perceived as legitimate responsibility in terms of honor and faithfulness with which managers carry out their responsibility is the most important function of executive. Thus, endurance of organization depends upon quality of leadership, and that quality derives from the breadth of the morality upon which it rests. Bernard articulated the principal defense of managerial capitalism and maintained the managerial process of moral authority to both run and modernize the nation and to harness the forces of technological change for public good. Bernard emphasized that legitimate management authority is based as functional skills and not hierarchical position. As she was not from classical era, she was from the human relation theory. That's why she emphasized over the functional skills of the human, not the hierarchical position. She emphasized over the managerial capitalism and maintained that management possesses the moral authority. She was more emphasized over moral authority rather than the classical thinker. Okay. So Bernard warned of a tendency for personnel to avoid responsibility. She warned about this is the tendency, like personnel can be avoid responsibility due to in part to fear of criticism, and that an executive must distribute responsibility or otherwise run the risk of being overwhelmed with burden of decision. If they will never fulfill their responsibility, there can be overwhelmed with burden of decision. For Bernard, leadership involved the guidance of conduct of others, and it required wide imagination and understanding. Leaders need to be more effective than others both in covering meaning and intention and in receiving them with sympathetic understanding. For Bernard, what leadership imply? Quality and morality of action. Responsibility is the quality which gives dependability and determination to human conduct, and foresight and ideality to purpose. What is the purpose? That is important. So determination, I will conduct that purpose, that is my responsibility. Responsibility is the most important function of executive. Responsibility means honor and faithfulness in the manner the manager carry out their duty. Bernard maintained that nearly everything depends upon moral commitment. Next question is what? When the media is controlled by vested interest, how can it control the vested interest in government? How can it control the vested interest in government? How can the media become more responsible and impartial? We can see media is not impartial, not responsible, as yellow journalism and TRP things and all that kind of things are prevalent in media. So we should have some points how we can increase the responsibility of the media. How can be it's more accountable, more responsible, impartial and value oriented towards the common public. Media freedom is generally accepted as a cornerstone of modern democratic society. However, there is also an acute awareness that media should be responsible in what and how it reports, and also clearly distinguish disseminating information from analysis and opinion. It should bring the demand of downtrodden people. First of all, we can see media is not doing the work according to that. What we want, downtrodden people should have all kind of rights. They should come in mainstream. It should play an active role to policy formulation and execution. It should work like watchdog. The context of medium should reflect truth, accuracy, objectiveness and balance. It should self-regulating framework of law and established institution. It should avoid whatever might lead to crime, violence, civil disorder. Okay, so however, to stay in the competition, media has started promoting unethical contents. Interest like advertisers' interests are more prevalent in media. Fishy journalism, yellow journalism, inflammable contents have started gaining prominence. Manager's role has become more important rather than role of new editor. In recent time, it has been seen that media is controlled by vested interest, reaffirming the role of media should play a healthy democracy. Media should speak the truth. Money influence, but Alarm come in when the question arises, what happen when this very same power, money, influence in funding or modern culture concerns, like if they are influencing by power, money and muscle power, then what can our culture, what will be our modern culture concerns? At the time when new reporting is more scrutinized than ever, when fake news is as prevalent as news that falsely labeled to so by the power that be, when we need reporter to be honest and without an agenda, the landscape is littered with media mogul that retain a vested interest that detract from honest news reporting. This dilute the major function of the media, transparency and accountability. The media has fallen prey to the vested interest in lobbying. Rather than pushing public interest, it is pushing its own interest. It should be regulated in the following way. Guideline of Press Council of India should be followed. So what can the measures we can take to media should be accountable, it should be responsible. We can take the guidelines from Press Council of India. Proactive and sensational headline should be avoided. Media should be not proactive and sensational, like it should not be so much sensitive towards one point. Headlines must reflect, justify matter under them. Language employed in writing the news should be temperate, like language should be very useful. That should be according to the common people, not according to the luxurious life. Okay, correction should be promptly published with the due prominence and regret expenses serious cases. Okay, so next question number 4. With every major transformation in the applied world of public administration, the study of public administration has grown in scope and intensity. Discuss the relationship between evolution of the discipline and profession of public administration. Here this is the question which is from classical public administration. What is asking, major transformation applied world of public administration, study of public administration has grown scope and intensity. Okay, and discuss relationship between the professional public administration and as a discipline both. Next question, system theory is not a theory but an approach to the study of administration. Next is from system theory, Linkert. Next, the principle of delegated legislation as the administrative law. Before we before Droid administration, all that is I think right, but I must emphasize that it is well for parliament to keep a watchful and even jealous eye on it at all stage. So what is asking, delegated legislation in parliament, it happened also in parliament because of workload and constraints of the officials, they delegated their legislation. So it is watchful and even jealous eye on it all stage. Parliament do this because of we will read again. Okay, so question number A was with every major transformation in the applied world of public administration, the study of public administration has grown in scope and intensity. Discuss the relationship evolution of discipline and profession of public administration. So here we should have to discuss some paradigm. First, second, fourth, like 6 paradigm are there. First paradigm was the politics administration dichotomy. The era was like before that public administration emerged as an independent separate subject in 1887. The study public administration given by Woodrow Wilson spoiled system in America. That's why it was happened as a separate discipline. Nicholas Henry in his book entitled Public Administration and Public Affair has explained the evolution of disciplining, keeping in view defining crisis into following succession paradigm. So what was the crisis? First was the politics administration dichotomy. From 19 to 1926, it was the timeline of the discipline of public administration. Certain scholars, as the starting year theme of politics administration dichotomy emerged. It was argued under theory of public administration concerned only with execution of state will, with the result that the institutional locus was sharply confined to policy executing institution. Okay, next was what the principle of administration. The time when 1927 to 1937, many scholars were there they given some principles like Henry Fayol was there, Weber was there, Simon was there, Taylor was there. So they all have given their own ideology, own principle theories in this era. Spare inquiry delineating the next logical question would have been to look for some specialized expertise with which it offered. The emphasis in the era was explaining efficient functioning of administrative organization, tools, techniques, principle for administrative efficiency, and discovering propagating the principle of administration. Okay, next was public administration as a political science from 1950 to 70. So it was the field of efficiency, virtually synonym with management, started getting challenges. There were lots of challenges like political science also one of the challenge for the public administration. So linked up the politics with the public administration was not appropriate. Many scholars having political science or constitutional root, but public administration was described in synonym with political science during this era. Both was synonymized in this era. So both value have the same constitutional value, foundation of both have the same, and these was some challenges as growing in the new discipline. Next was public administration as management. This was the good era for public administration because public administration as a political science and alter ego management regarding the priority of public administration and regarding the identity of public with one of both discipline. It was argued that public administration should be considered more like management because if public administration are well managed, all goal of public administration can be achieved. Next word public administration as public administration. That era was from 1970 to 80. It suffers identity of crisis because competing kept coming from time to time, and discipline did not have core single dominant theme at any one time. Thus, philosophy of new public administration evolved in this era. Next was public administration as public management. So, new public management, new public administration was developed in this era. So, okay, fundamental question started. Now, what should the role of size of government? And lots of question, theoretical perspective and philosophical perspective merge with each other. So a definition and evaluation of new public management, new public administration, globalization, re-engineering, devolution, redefinition was come in that era. Next, what was the question? Question was system theory. Essence is not a theory but an approach to study administration system. The system is a set of interconnected elements that function together in a tandem to make a whole being. So a system approach administrator is described as a system comprising subsystem, structure, pupil, action, interaction that enable it, administration or organization to perform certain function. Every system influences its subsystem and is also influenced by its subsystem. Like education is a system, then Samagra Shiksha is the subsystem for this, Sarva Shiksha is the subsystem, Nishtha portal is the subsystem for that, and we can say the new education policy also as part of the subsystem. Okay, this system reject the closed system approach of the organization classical theory of organization, where it was stated that organization is independent of the environment and society and is not connected to it. So closed system is rejected. Instead, their organization and environment work together and have fluent exchange in order to adjust, and in end there is homogeneous stable equilibrium between environment and the system. Changing one part of the system affect other part, and positive growth and adaptation of system depend upon how well the system is adjusted with the environment, and system often exists to accomplish a common purpose that aids in the maintenance of system. So there is some common purpose where the system adjusted themselves with the environment. This approach theory take a holistic approach that it take into account and study all elements of organization, hierarchy, communication, personnel, procedure, informal as well as formal organization, and interface connection between organization and the environment. It states that organization and the environment are interdependent and should be analyzed together and how they influence each other. This approach not lead to solution of all administrative problem, but it surely did help generate awareness. System approach become all the modern in today time where organizations are growing and expanding homogeneously, transcending national boundary with product diversification, growing complexity functioning within them, and so it required to integrate them all within a framework. Thus, there is strong relation between evaluation of discipline and profession of public administration. What was the next question? The principle of delegated legislation is, I think, right, but must emphasize that it well for Parliament to keep a watchful and even jealous eye on it at all stage. So what is the principle of delegated legislation? It's a traditional theory. The function of the executive is to administer the law enacted by the legislature. And in an ideal state, the legislature power must be exercised exclusively by the legislature, who are directly responsible to the electorate. Apart from the pure administrative function, the executive also performs legislative and the judicial function also. Okay. Power is sometimes conferred on the government to modify the provision of existing statute for the purpose of removing difficulties. When the legislative passes an act, it cannot foresee all the difficulties which may arise in implementing it. The executive is therefore empowered to make necessary changes to remove such difficulty. Such provision is also necessary when the legislature extends a law to a new area or to an area where the socio-economic conditions are different. Why delegated legislation are important? Because executive is the not aware about the new areas. Legislature is not aware about the new areas, so they should has delegated their power the known the technically proficient persons. That's why it's important. Okay, there are lots of difficulties because of social and economic conditions. There is time constraints also. Okay, even though there is no specific bar in the Constitution of India against the delegation of legislative power by the legislature to the executive, it is now well settled that essential legislative function cannot be delegated by the legislature to the executive. In other words, legislative policy must be laid down by the legislature itself, and by entrusting this power to executive, the legislature cannot create a parallel legislature. So, when legislating authority is delegating their power to executive, they create a parallel legislature, because they can be a watchdog, they can be jealous eye over them, they can give them some instructions how to they do the work, but they cannot create a parallel legislature. It is the question of transparency, accountability. If they will create that, the question will be arise. Legislature is accountable to the citizen who elected them, where the executive are not. What is executive function? To execute the policies. What is legislature's function? To build, to make the new policies, and they are directly responsible toward the citizen. So that's why there are lots of problems. Thus, giving them power to frame the law without supervision is risky. If legislature is not supervising them, it's risky. The legislature cannot delegate unanalyzed and uncontrolled power. The legislature must set the limits of power delegated by declaring the policy of the law and by laying down a standard of guidance of those on whom the power to execute the law is confirmed. Thus, the delegation is valid only when the legislative policy and guideline to implement it are legislature. Essential function cannot be delegated. One point should be kept in mind: delegation can be held the normal functions, but the important functions and the essential function cannot be delegated. It was observed that it is a fundamental principle of the constitutional law that everything necessary to the exercise of power is included in the grant of power, that the legislature cannot certainly strive itself of its essential function and waste the same on the extraneous authority, and that primarily duty of the law making has to be discharged by legislature itself, but delegation may be resorted to. So this is some measures was given here. Question: what was the question? Question was the principle of delegated legislation. I think right, but I must emphasize that it well for Parliament to keep a watchdog. Why? Because they cannot form a parallel legislature. They cannot give delegated legislation to the executive that for essential function. Okay, the important kind of policies matters and the money matters and the financial matters, they cannot give them to the executive to form the policy for that matters. That's why they should always keep a watchdog and even jealous eye on it all stage, so that policy can be formulated according to the situation, according to the work, and according to the proficiency, effectiveness, efficiency of the work. That's why delegated legislation is the necessary evil in an organization.